Today's lecture is not a conventional analysis of international politics. It is an inquiry into something far more unsettling, the architecture of human belief, and the moment it begins to override reality. We begin with a simple but dangerous question. Why do nations move toward war, even when every rational calculation advises against it? Why do systems of power tighten control, precisely when flexibility would ensure survival? And why do leaders, fully aware of the cost, choose destruction over compromise? To approach this, we must abandon the illusion that politics is governed purely by rational incentives. Instead, we must analyze four interlocking dimensions: political psychology, collective psychology, religious cognition, and the psychology of war. When these four layers converge, a nation ceases to function as a calculating entity. It transforms into something else entirely, an organism that exists to defend belief. At that point, the familiar Western model collapses. The idea that states negotiate when losing and fight when gaining advantage no longer applies. Because in this domain, there are things more valuable than survival itself: identity, conviction, a sense of existential purpose. And here we encounter the central question of this lecture. When does a human being choose belief over reality? This is not a question about one country. It is a question about all systems: nations, corporations, institutions, even individuals. To deepen this understanding, we turn not to modern political theory, but to an ancient philosophical text, the Tibetan Book of the Dead. It suggests something profoundly disturbing. Even after death, the human mind does not perceive reality as it is. Instead, it wanders through projections shaped by its own fears. This is not merely theology. It is a theory of consciousness. And when we apply this insight to political systems, a deeply uncomfortable conclusion emerges. States, too, can enter illusions. Power structures can mistake their own narratives for reality, and groups will often choose shared belief over objective truth. This is the psychological threshold at which war begins. War does not start when armies are ready, nor when economies collapse. War begins at the precise moment when belief becomes more important than reality. In this lecture, we examine this transformation through a specific case, modern Iran. But our goal is not description. It is diagnosis. Why is negotiation rejected even when it is viable? Why does leadership grow more rigid as pressure increases? Why do moderates disappear while hardliners consolidate power? And most importantly, why do people knowingly choose a path of risk? The answer does not lie in strategy or weaponry. It lies in the structure of the human mind. Let us now move deeper. From a Western rationalist perspective, the logic seems straightforward: maximize benefit, minimize loss. But this framework assumes that survival is the highest value. Within the Iranian power structure, particularly under the system shaped by the supreme leader and the Revolutionary Guard, this assumption fails. Here, three priorities dominate: the survival of the regime, the purity of ideology, the legitimacy of sacrifice. Notice what is absent. Individual survival is not the primary variable. It is secondary, sometimes even expendable. In political psychology, surrender is not interpreted as a tactical move. It is perceived as the collapse of identity. The Revolutionary Guard is not merely a military institution. It is constructed as the guardian of a sacred revolution. Within this framework, the world is divided into moral absolutes: a corrupt external order versus a divinely justified system. Thus, negotiation is not diplomacy. It is betrayal. And once that reinterpretation occurs, the decision-making axis shifts. The critical question is no longer, is this beneficial? It becomes, does this preserve who we are? Now we must consider the second layer, collective psychology. As external pressure increases, the internal structure of a group does not moderate. It radicalizes. This phenomenon is known as group polarization. Its mechanics are precise. External threat strengthens internal cohesion. Dissenting voices are eliminated or silenced. Repetition of shared belief intensifies certainty. The result is not simply unity. It is a collective illusion. We cannot be wrong. This pattern is not unique to states. It appears in corporations under crisis, in religious movements under persecution, and even in digital communities shaped by algorithmic reinforcement. When opposing views disappear, complex reality collapses into binary thinking. We are right. They are wrong. At this stage, strategic errors become inevitable because correction mechanisms no longer exist. Finally, repetition seals the system. What is repeated becomes familiar. What is familiar becomes accepted. And what is accepted begins to feel like truth. Over time, belief detaches entirely from reality, yet feels more certain than ever. When these processes converge, a system enters what we may call a closed cognitive loop. Inside this loop, three convictions dominate. We are always right. Failure is caused by external forces. Change is unnecessary. At this point, escalation is no longer a choice. It is a structural outcome. Now we return to the broader implication. This pattern is not confined to geopolitics. It exists in organizations that suppress dissent, in societies that prioritize conformity over truth, and in individuals who choose comforting narratives over painful reality. The ancient text warned us, humans do not simply encounter truth. They must choose it. And often they do not, because reality is demanding. It requires adaptation, humility, and loss. Illusion, by contrast, offers coherence, certainty, and emotional safety. But it comes at a cost. Greater conflict, deeper destruction, and irreversible trajectories. If this lecture has value, it is not in explaining one nation. It is in revealing a pattern, a hidden structure that governs decisions. When belief overtakes reason. And once you see this structure, you will begin to recognize it everywhere. In global conflicts, in institutional behavior, and perhaps uncomfortably, within yourself. In the next lecture, we will go further. We will examine why, within such systems, moderates vanish, and only the most extreme positions survive. Because at the center of power, what endures is not what is reasonable, but what is adaptive to the system's internal logic. If this analysis has sharpened your perspective, consider subscribing and share so that more people can begin to see what is usually invisible. We begin not with certainty, but with a question. When the choice comes, will you follow reality or belief?